Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Inshallah, we'll try to finish this volume soon. The last time we talked about what is the situation and the status of the person who does not pray, right? And I think everybody was here, right? Most people were here. The bottom line, before we go on, the bottom line is that the hadith on this matter are very scary, and they indicate clearly, explicitly, that the difference between a Muslim and a non-Muslim is this salah. This is the least of the deeds a Muslim has to perform to translate his belief in Allah Azza wa Jal. And the hadith clearly state that who abandons the salah completely, doesn't pray any rak'at, not at all, then he faqad kafar. He has committed the kufr. And the Sahaba, it is narrated by Abdullah ibn Shaqiq that he said, this is the only kind of sin that the Sahaba considered as a kufr, the abandonment of salah. Because many other deeds they considered as the minor kufr, such as fighting between Muslims, that's considered as the minor kufr. Kufr duna kufr, they call it. The lesser kufr, or the minor kufr, which is a sin that is worse than the gravest of sins, but doesn't mount to the actual kufr that takes somebody out of Islam. That's called kufr duna kufr, the lesser kufr. And there's multiple actions that were described like that. But when it comes to salah, it seems that the hadith indicate that this is the real kufr, not just the minor or lesser kufr. Because especially the hadith that says العهد الذي بيننا وبينهم الصلاة فمن تركها فقد كفر. This is the demarcation between us and them, meaning the non-believers. So it's very clear he's not talking about sin that is considered a grave and major sin, and that's it. No. Prophet ﷺ is clearly talking about something that is clear kufr, which means total abandonment of Islam, apostasy. And it is enough that a person, the scholars of Islam have differed about him. Is he a Muslim or not? That alone is a threat that he will find the answer when he dies. He will find the answer, this group was right or this group was right, when there's no way back, right? So this is a huge risk a person would be taking, that where some scholars say that he's a kafir, that he has no hope of leaving the fire of hell at all, and all his deeds are basically abolished because he has committed kufr. And while the other ones say that he's committed one of the worst sins that anyone can commit by abandonment of salah. So it's really a big gamble that he's taken with his own destiny. May Allah save us from that. Ameen. So salah is obligatory على المسلم البالغ العاقل. It's obligatory on the adult Muslim who is sane. Because the hadith is clear that رفع القلم عن ثلاثة النائم حتى يستيقظ وعن الصبي حتى يكبر وعن النائم وعن المجنون حتى يفيق. The three kinds of people are basically exempted from being responsible for their deeds in front of Allah, means they will not be judged and held accountable. And one of them is that a person who is asleep. Of course, because some people, when they're sleeping, sometimes they may behave. There are certain diseases of sleep where a person may get up and do something. There are conditions like this.
Sleepwalk.
Not only walking, but they can actually do some people.
Kill people.
Yeah, they can. One time I heard somebody say that. I was talking to a man and his wife. She says she doesn't sleep with him in the same bed because he's a big guy and he can sometimes punch when she's sleeping or kick. So things like this. And I know of somebody who actually was admitted to the hospital one time, and many years ago, and he had this condition where he sleepwalks, but he actually got up and ran, and he walked through a glass door and injured himself severely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can happen. نائم حتى يستيقظ. So if somebody does that and walks and dies, he hasn't committed suicide. It's involuntary. وعن الصبي حتى يكبر, the child until he reaches puberty, حتى يحتلم أو يكبر. وعن المجنون حتى يعقل أو يفيق. In some narrations, وعن المبتلى حتى يبرأ. And the insane person until he regains his sanity, because he's not at that point responsible for his actions. And it varies to the degree of sanity. Some people are totally insane, like they have, active and florid schizophrenia. They just don't know. They're delusional. They're seeing things. So those people are not really responsible for their actions now. But somebody may have, some depression. He's responsible. Anxiety, responsible. Allah knows how much He is aware of what He's doing. Now, the child, however, it is the responsibility of the parents to teach him or her the salah. According to the hadith, مُرُوا أَوْلَادَكُمْ بِالصَّلَاةِ وَهُمْ أَبْنَاءُ سَبْعِ سِنِينَ. You should teach the children to do the salah from as young as 7 years. And if you can do earlier, that's fine as well. All Muslim scholars and Muslim Ummah in general have agreed upon the fact that salah the obligatory salah are 5 salawat fil yawmi wal layla. In the 24 hours we have 5 obligatory salah. And many ahadith indicate that. One of them is the hadith that is narrated in Bukhari and Muslim by Talha ibn Ubaidillah, that a Bedouin came to Prophet ﷺ and he asked him, O Muhammad ﷺ, tell me what Allah has made incumbent upon us of salah. He says, as-salawat al-khams illa an tatawwa shay'an. He says, the 5 prayers, but then it's up to you if you want to pray more than that of voluntary prayers. Salah, of course, is a timed ibadah. It is timed to a specific, each salah has its own time range. إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ كَانَتْ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ كِتَابًا مَوْقُوتًا, which means that if somebody deliberately takes it out of its time, then really it's not acceptable that he does it after the time. It's only acceptable if somebody, for instance, slept and the time has passed and he didn't mean that, or he forgot and time has passed, then he can make up for it. But somebody who deliberately allowed the time to go out, then there's no point in doing the salah. It will not be accepted. What he has to do is repent to Allah sincerely and be determined not to go back to neglecting the salah, and increase his nawafil. Do more of the voluntary prayers to make up for this deficiency that he has fallen into. Okay? But Allah does not accept the salah after its time. Like somebody, may Allah save us, wakes up for the morning salah after sunrise every day, and that's his habit. It's a big problem. This is an unacceptable salah. He's not doing it according to what Allah has prescribed at all. مَنْ عَمِلَ عَمَلًا لَيْسَ عَلَيْهِ أَمْرُنَا فَهُوَ رَدٌّ. If you do the deeds not according to what I have prescribed, what has been prescribed by Allah and His Messenger, it is rejected. You can do as many as you want. You can get up at 9 o'clock and do 100 rak'at. It will not make up for that, for neglecting the timing of the salah. Now, the timing of salah, we'll just read a couple of hadith on this matter, and then we'll finish, and then we'll talk about the timing in more detail, because there's lots to say about all these pages about the timings of salah. So look at this. We have like 15 or 20 pages. Yeah, still. So, huh? Probably to the end of the book. so let me read just a couple of hadith in this matter, and then we'll. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: وقت الظهر إذا زالت الشمس وكان ظل الرجل كطوله ما لم يحضر العصر، وقت العصر ما لم تصفر الشمس، وقت المغرب ما لم يغب الشفق، ووقت صلاة العشاء إلى نصف الليل الأوسط، ووقت صلاة الصبح من طلوع الفجر ما لم تطلع الشمس، فإذا طلعت الشمس فأمسك عن الصلاة فإنها تطلع بين قرني الشيطان. Basically, the meaning of this hadith is that Zuhr time is from the time the sun moves from the zenith, from being just in the middle of the sky. As it starts to move towards the west, that is when the time of Dhuhr starts. And it continues until the length of the shadow is equal to the height of that object. وكان ظل الرجل كطوله. So it continues, because as you're standing like this and the sun moves, your shadow, the length of your shadow will increase until it becomes equal to your own height. That is when the time of Dhuhr ends, time of Asr starts. And then Asr starts its time and it continues إذا زالت الشمس وكان ظل ما لم تصفر الشمس. Now, this is the preferred time for Asr, before the sun becomes yellowish. This is the preferred time, and the time that we should always try to keep the Asr time within. But if somebody is really pressed and so busy, he can pray Asr before the sunset. But this is makruh, this is disliked, detestable for somebody to always pray Asr between the time the sun has become yellowish and the sunset. That's not good. Okay? And
nowadays, that's what we have to do.
What do you mean? What?
In these winters, that's what, because at work.
No, I understand. You do your best, but in general, we should try to keep it within that preferred time. But if somebody is pressed for some circumstances, that's a different story. The time does extend until sunset. وقت صلاة المغرب ما لم يغب الشفق. As long as the Maghrib Salah, which is the sunset Salah, starts from the time the sun sets below the horizon and continues as long as you can see this reddish horizon. As long as you can see the reddish horizon, still Maghrib time. Once this redness in the horizon disappears, the Isha time comes. That's usually about an hour and a half after the time of Maghrib, usually.
Sorry, about half, 1.5 hours?
1.5 hour, usually.
So that Maghrib time is, that meaning it's long time?
It's usually, yes. Huh? But we go by those signs. It will differ from day to day and time to time, but these are the signs. And then وقت صلاة العشاء إلى نصف الليل الأوسط. Isha time until midnight. Now we'll talk about this in more detail, because scholars have talked about what time of Isha, especially the Asr time and the Isha time. There's lots to say about them. But generally speaking, preferably Isha should be done before midnight. And midnight doesn't just always mean 12 midnight. You count midnight by looking at the time of Maghrib, the sunset time, and the Fajr time.
Yeah, for our country, midnight
is midnight, because close to the equator, midnight is midnight. It varies in other locations. Mm-hmm. So you look at the time between Maghrib and Fajr and you divide it by half. That is midnight. That is the real midnight. And وقت صلاة الصبح من طلوع الفجر. Fajr Salah, of course, the Subh Salah is called Salat al-Subh or Salat al-Fajr. Because some people think that Salat al-Subh is different than Salat al-Fajr. They think that Fajr is the Salah that you do before sunrise. But if you do it after sunrise, we call it Salat al-Subh and it's still acceptable. No, it's not. they think if they change the name, then then it becomes acceptable. No, that's not acceptable. No, it's Fajr is Subh Salah. Okay? As long as ما لم تطلع الشمس, as long as the sun has not risen. فإذا طلعت الشمس فأمسك عن الصلاة. Once the sun starts rising, just starts rising, you have to stop from praying. فإنها تطلع بين قرني الشيطان, because it rises between the two horns of the shaitan, and this is from the ghaib. This is from the unseen world that we have been informed about. And you abstain from salah until the sun has risen, of course, and that comes to awqat al-karaha. This will also come, the times where it is detestable and disliked to pray on. There are times we should not be praying in unless you are really pressed. You are really pressured for some reason. But from that time it starts rising all the way until it rises about qida rumh, a length. If you look at the horizon like this, it has risen above the horizon by the length of a spear, qida rumh. That's about at least 10 minutes, usually 15 to 20 minutes to be on the safe side. This is just the basic hadith, but there are many hadith about the timings of salah, and there's lots of talk about this. So inshallah we'll leave it to the next class. Inshallah. Yes, sir.
Before sunrise, about 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes.
You start work before Fajr?
No, before sunrise.
Yes.
If I wake up.
If you wake up, yes.
What I have to do? I have to wait until.
No, you don't wait. If you wake up before sunrise, but even by 5 minutes, or at sunrise, even, you immediately make your wudu and you do your salah, and you can do the sunnah and then the salah if the time has passed. Now, if you feel there's only time to get one salah and not the sunnah and the salah, I heard Shaykh Uthaymeen saying that you pray the sunnah then the salah. That's not what I personally feel, because really, I mean, I only have 5 minutes. Why would I do, yeah, the sunnah is not a fard, right? You understand me? Exactly. Because sunnah can be made up. Or if you don't pray it at all, you're still on the safe side, right? But you have 5 minutes. What do you choose to do? Do the fard. Do the fard. Get that out of the way, and this way you're on the safe side. And then after sunrise, do the sunnah if you have time, inshallah. No. Yeah, because the time of karaha, the time where it's disliked and discouraged to pray, that applies only to those prayers that you just decide to pray for no pressing reason. But as long as there's a strong reason, you have to pray, because you have to do your salah before you go to work, right? No.
The changes in timing, that is daylight savings.
Yes.
Appear to confuse a lot, especially if one has to be doing a Salat Dua.
Yes.
So Salat Dua is, I think it's advisable to pray it about between 9 and 11.
Well, Salat al-Duha can start from the time the sun has risen, about 15 minutes after the sunrise.
After the sunrise?
Yes, 15 minutes.
The
Then all the way till 15 minutes before Dhuhr. This you can do that.
15 minutes before Dhuhr.
Up until 15 minutes before Dhuhr.
But one cannot pray it at the time when the sun is right at the head, as you rightly said.
Exactly, because 15 minutes before Dhuhr, it has not really reached the middle of the sky yet. You stop praying about 15 to 20 minutes before Dhuhr, because that is 15 to 20 minutes before Dhuhr. Yeah. That is when the sun is in the middle of the sky. That is when you hold. But before that, if you go to 20 minutes before that, it has not reached the mid-center of the sky. Okay? You can still pray up until 20 minutes before Dhuhr, and you can start praying 20 minutes from that time the sun has risen, from it has started to rise. So you have lots of time, yani. And if we go by the signs, you wouldn't be confused. Yani, we get confused because we go by numbers.
Yeah. The confusion arose as a result. I was thinking about the geography of sun movement.
Yeah.
Which says that at 12 p.m. the sun is right and tall, and so by the timing changes. Then that 12 o'clock goes back.
Absolutely no. In this part of the world, you cannot go by these numbers. If you're in Nigeria, you can, or Ethiopia, you can, because 12 noon is the sun is in the middle. Here is somewhere else.